In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Samsung Note 10 Plus. And I want to give you guys a big warning. This is going to be very critical, very negative review. There are a lot of paid positive reviews that are like kind of sponsored by Samsung. And I tried my best to really want to like this phone, but there are so many things that kind of prevented me from loving this phone. So if you're looking for an in-depth, very critical review of this phone, this video is for you. But if you want to buy this phone, I recommend not watching it. So let's do a quick unboxing and let's talk about this phone. I do recommend if you're switching from a previous Samsung phone to use Smart Switch. I've been using it a lot and I find it very convenient, and it's super fast to switch from your old phone to the new phone by transferring all your contents, your images, and your apps. It was really efficient. Now for the duration of this entire review, I want to give you some context. I am coming from the Samsung S9, just the regular S9, and I really love this phone. I've been using it for a year and I thought that I would upgrade to the Galaxy Note 10 Plus. But obviously I've run into some big issues, which I'm going to be talking about right now. The first thing I want to talk about is the build quality and the form factor of this massive phablet. Now, unfortunately, the form factor of this device is one of the main reasons why I'm starting to not like it as much. Don't get me wrong, I think the Note 10 Plus looks absolutely amazing. It's beautiful with all its glass and large screen. It's definitely a fingerprint magnet, and I feel like it's very fragile. I feel like if I dropped it, it would shatter into a million pieces. That's why I recommend getting a case. And there are many different colors that you can get from. The Aura Glow is a very big one that's becoming viral. I got the black one because I don't really care. I just put on a case on my phones. I usually drop my phones accidentally, so I don't want to drop it and then affect its resale value. I don't know why people care so much about the colors, especially those who pre-ordered the white Samsung exclusive. That is pre-ordered, that it was delayed by 1 month. I don't know why you care about getting a particular color, because you're going to end up putting a case. I mean, who really, except for those who have like a lot of money or buy the Samsung Care, who really doesn't put on a case on their phone? I mean, it covers the design unless you use the clear case, and clear cases look really kind of ugly in my opinion. But I mean, really, who wants to use a $1,500 slippery phone that's made of glass without any protection? That's why I don't know why the Aura Glow is such a big deal, because no one's really going to see that fancy color unless you take it out of the case. Now, I know getting this phone, I knew it was going to be big. I mean, they call it a phablet for a reason. I'm a pretty big guy. I have pretty decent large hands. And when I use this device, I mean, I can hold it fine. I can grab stuff. I can touch stuff. But one of the most annoying things is pulling down the notification bar. And I do that a lot because I get a lot of notifications. And there are a lot of quick actions on the notification panel that you can get when you expand the notification panel. So I use this feature a lot. And unfortunately, it's actually really difficult for me with one hand to kind of pull down the notification bar. Due to its boxy design and the case that I'm using, when I pull from the top of the phone, I feel like it's very uncomfortable because I'm like hitting a very jagged edge. It's not smooth, kind of like the S9 where it has like a smooth edge. It's kind of like a sharp edge. So when I pull down, it doesn't feel very good. This might sound like a nitpick, but if you're pulling down the notification like 100 times a day, it gets really annoying. And what's worst of all is that since they use a different type of fingerprint scanner, I no longer have the gesture to swipe down on my fingerprint scanner to pull down the notification panel. And this really sucks because sure, you can use like a home launcher, like Nova Launcher or the Bixby Launcher, and you can swipe down on the home screen to kind of expand the notification panel. But if you're in an app, you can't do that. You kind of have to, you have to go to the top and pull down the notification panel. I really like the gesture on the S9 where I could just use the fingerprint scanner, unlock my phone in one motion, but also pull down the notification panel using that fingerprint gesture. Unfortunately, you don't have it in this phone anymore. Another thing I don't like about the form factor of this device is that it's actually quite heavy, especially when it's coupled with the case that the protective case, which I did a completely separate review. I definitely recommend checking it out because it is my favorite case, despite some of the shortcomings I've listed about it. But back to the phone itself, I do find it really heavy. And sometimes when I'm holding it in one hand, that kind of heft compared to my previous phone, the S9, you kind of do get fatigue, and it does get annoying to hold for long periods of time. Another annoyance of the form factor of the Note 10 Plus is that they've aligned the cameras on the far left side kind of aligned up vertically. And what happens is that I use my phone with my left hand. I find that it's very easy to get my fingers on top of the camera and smudge them. I would have much preferred if they used the S10 type of arrangement of cameras, kind of more in the middle. I think that would make it less likely to get smudges on your camera lens. Getting smudges on your camera lens is actually really bad because sometimes you don't notice it and you take a picture and it just looks really unfocused. It looks very blurry, it looks very grayed out. I notice that cleaning my lenses every once in a while, or very often depending on how many times I smudge it, really produces a much sharper image and a lot more vivid kind of picture quality. So that kind of is really annoying. I mean, these are amazing cameras that are on this phone, but you end up smudging them very often due to its form factor. Now, this might be a very subjective thing. You might be using the phone on your right hand and you might not kind of get smudges on your phone. It really depends on how you use this phone. Now, there's one positive about the form factor that I do like about this device, and that's the button arrangement. I like how that they stacked all the buttons on the left side of the phone. Kind of keeping it all on one side really helps with landscape video. So when you're watching a video, you can basically have it on your table and you can have your power button and your volume controls all on one side. And that makes it really easy to use as you're using your phone in landscape. Another nice thing about this button arrangement is that you can completely disable Bixby, which thank goodness, let's rejoice. Let's kill Bixby. I really hate Bixby. It's kind of the worst thing in the world. Terrible voice recognition. Okay, so moving on, the next thing I want to talk about is the large screen or the display. And let me just say right off the bat that this screen is absolutely gorgeous. This OLED panel looks really good. Samsung are known for their amazing screen quality. Viewing off angles, it looks fantastic. The edges on the side don't really affect the picture quality as much as the previous generations, in my opinion. And I love that they have totally vertical and horizontal, kind of almost bezel-less design. I really love how big the screen is. It's so amazing. It's beautiful to look at. However, there is a major con with this. With every type of design change, there's major trade-offs. And by having a larger screen, you're obviously going to have a bigger phone. And I find that having a larger screen, personally for me, doesn't really affect my productivity on my phone. I find that I still see more or less the same type of information. I find that the interface when multitasking, trying to put two apps side by side, very cumbersome in the Samsung One UI. I don't find it very easy to kind of multitask because of the software experience. I do think that the screen real estate does afford more room, and it's obviously easier to multitask, but it's still a very frustrating experience. So that's why I end up not multitasking at all. I kind of just have a single screen for a single application. So I don't really get much benefit out of a larger screen. I think I much rather have a smaller screen and just have that portability and that comfort in my pocket. Now, a lot of people were hating so hard on the non-plus version of the Note 10, saying that the screen doesn't have, 1440p or higher kind of resolution. Personally, I think this is really stupid. I think that 1080p looks totally fine. And in fact, anything over 1080p really, really drains your battery. It really kills your battery. And for me, battery performance, like lasting all day, is really important than having like a super fine resolution. And what's funny is that Samsung defaults a lot of their screens to regular HD resolution. I think they're telling us that if you're using a high resolution, you're going to affect your battery really poorly. Now, with the pinhole at the top for the camera, I actually really like this design. I think it looks really cool. It's kind of cool how they can build the screen around a camera. I think, to me, I don't know, I'm just nerdy. I think that looks really cool. And I totally never kind of notice it. When I'm watching full frame videos on my entire screen, the hole punch does not affect me at all. And I much prefer this over a huge notch, kind of like on the iPhone. So good job on the front-facing camera. It looks fantastic. And I like that I have all the screen real estate. There's one major flaw with having a bezel-less kind of phone, and that's not having an LED indicator light. And I personally really enjoyed using my LED indicator light to receive notifications. I don't have to turn on my screen to know if I have a notification or to see my charging status of my phone. What they've done instead is use an always-on display technology, which kind of displays what the battery is showing in terms of its percentage or whatever. And for me, I don't really like this always-on display. I think it's kind of very distracting, especially when I have it by my nightstand, my phone. And I also am very worried about OLED burn-in. I'm not sure if this type of always-on display is safe to have, especially if you're charging your phone overnight. It's basically going to be on for 10 hours, and I don't know if that's going to cause any burn-in to your screen. So I would much rather have a LED light. I'm fine with having kind of bezels at the top and the bottom that are really small. So to me, I'm not a big fan of this design. It does look very elegant, but that practicality and kind of using it day to day, it's not for me. The next thing I want to talk about is the fingerprint scanner, and this is such a critical feature, security, and ease of access to our phones that it deserves an entire section on this. To me, the fingerprint scanner in the new Note 10 Plus does look cool. It uses this new ultrasonic in-display technology, but I'm really not liking it, and it's actually one of the biggest deal breakers for me on this phone. Let me explain why. Now, first off, let me explain that I really like this new design of the in-display fingerprint scanner. I really like not having to flip my phone around to unlock it. Let's say your phone is on your desk and you want to open your password manager. You can just simply tap the screen, or let's say you open an app that requires your fingerprint scanner. It's just very convenient. I really like that kind of use case. However, there is a major downside, and that is that there's no designated spot for the fingerprint scanners. So when you take your phone out of your pocket and you want to unlock it, it's kind of difficult because you have to aim precisely right on the fingerprint scanner where the ultrasonic sensor lives under the display. And for me to aim perfectly on the right, kind of right in the center of your phone, vertically and horizontally, it's actually quite challenging, and I do miss very often. So I get a mismatched fingerprint quite often when I take out my phone. So what Samsung provides is some helpful features such as an always on display, or the ability for your phone to turn on as you kind of lift it or has any motion. That is very helpful to kind of see where the fingerprint sensor is exactly, but sometimes you're not looking at your phone all the time and you want to simply take out your pocket and unlock it. And that, honestly, I can say like 1 out of every 2 tries, like 50% accuracy. I also find that the fingerprint sensor is extremely slow. And I know this sounds kind of like nitpicking, but I really think that when you use this feature every day, like so many times a day to unlock your phone so many times a day, having a quick, very responsive, non-laggy fingerprint sensor is essential for any phone. What's worse about having a slow fingerprint sensor is that since it's sometimes inaccurate, sometimes like you misposition your thumb, you don't know if it's just taking a long time or you actually just missed your fingerprint. So like the feedback of it reading your fingerprint is really slow. As I mentioned before about always on display, I'm kind of worried about using it because it does waste battery and it can cost OLED burn-in display. So I don't know if always on display is a good solution to show where the fingerprint sensor is. Now, I much prefer my S9 fingerprint sensor. Yes, it's on the back and it's pretty close to the camera, so sometimes you get smudges, but with my case that I'm using, it kind of has a groove. So it's very ergonomic to just kind of take out your phone. You kind of naturally have your finger on the back of your phone kind of align on the fingerprint sensor, and you can unlock it really fast. The technology on those fingerprint sensors, those type of styles, is very fast. In fact, I noticed that as you lightly tap on a traditional type of fingerprint sensor, you can just tap it. You don't have to hold and press it, and it unlocks right away. Whereas with the Note 10 Plus, you can't just tap it gently. You kind of have to hold it there. So it's kind of annoying the way it kind of works. And obviously with an in-display fingerprint sensor, you're missing that kind of gesture where you can, in one full sweep motion, you can unlock your phone and swipe down the notification panel. I mentioned this before. I think not having this feature really sucks. I think it's an underrated feature. I wish that Samsung could implement a type of feature where you could unlock the phone with the in-display fingerprint sensor, but also kind of swipe down to kind of give like a quick notification panel expansion. Now I'm going to show you a video of my friends and I trying to compare all the fingerprint sensors together. We're comparing an S8, an S10e, and my Galaxy Note 10 Plus, and you can notice that no matter what, I know this is very non-scientific and not exact, but we kind of try to sync this with 1, 2, 3 countdown, and you can see that my Note 10 Plus is super slow. It's always last. These differences in milliseconds may not seem like a lot, but for repetitive usage, having a slow fingerprint sensor is kind of like the bane of my existence.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay.
Oh,
wow.
I messed up there. Okay.
Sorry, we're doing something right now. Okay, wait.
3, 2, 1, go. Okay, let's try that again. What? I got it right over it, okay? 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, let's do it one more time.
Okay. Good.
Ready?
That was
Just leave it recording, okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, yours is definitely slower.
I saw like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, I think pretty consistent, so like mine and his than his.
I wish there was a way to test the fingerprint sensor in store prior to purchasing this really expensive phone. If I had tried the fingerprint sensor in the store or at least demoed it, I would have definitely not bought this phone. I would have just completely like, okay, it's not for me. I hope in the future that Samsung kind of goes away from this type of in-display fingerprint scanner until they nail it, or they find better technology. Perhaps you can place your fingerprint sensor in a larger region. If it was a larger region, I think that would have been more tolerable. And if they improved the speed, I think it would be a really good type of fingerprint scanner. The next thing I want to talk about is the performance of the Note 10 Plus. And obviously it's one of the fastest phones out there, and it has 12 gigs of RAM. So I noticed that when I'm toggling between many apps, my session of my app kind of lives. Now that's not to say that the S9 was any slow. It's actually pretty fast, and I find that switching between apps is totally fine. So I found that this upgrade from S9 to S10, or the Note 10 Plus, is very much a side grade. I don't really feel it being any faster, and I think that Android phones these days, any flagship ones that you've bought last year, are not going to be that much better than the current year generation. Now, in terms of the battery life, I think it's okay. You definitely want to charge this every night. I don't think it's going to last more than a day unless you're, a very light user. I do recommend keeping it at HD resolution, 1080, because I think anything above that is really going to kill the battery. It is a 4300 milliamp battery. It's supposed to be really big, but I don't know. I think it's okay. It's mediocre. It gets me through the day. If you're filming a lot of like 4K 60 frames per second video, or you're kind of using the display a lot, that large display does eat a lot of the battery, so it kind of negates the bigger battery. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about the S Pen. The S Pen is obviously the most defining characteristic of the Note 10 Plus and the regular Note 10. I find that the air gestures, there's this big new kind of fancy thing they've added where they have a gyro inside the actual pen. I do find it kind of a gimmick. I've been trying it out, and it's totally a gimmick. It's kind of pretty much useless. I don't see it being very useful in any situation. And I was actually a previous Note user. I actually bought the Note 2, the second iteration. And I find that the S Pen, I thought I would use it a lot, but I don't know. I just don't use it that much. I tried, making my script for this kind of video, and I found that the experience of writing on a very kind of skinny display, kind of like in terms of the horizontal distance, I find it kind of annoying to write because my palm doesn't have a good place to kind of rest. So writing on the display, it is pretty responsive. It looks really cool. It feels like fun, but in my opinion, it's not very productive. And I don't know if it's any more faster than just typing. I'm actually very accustomed to typing quick notes on my Google Keep app with just using my two thumbs. So I don't know if having a pen is actually that handy. One of the cool benefits of having the S Pen though is taking selfies. I do find that feature pretty helpful, but I don't really take that many selfies, and if you're recording yourself, maybe that's very helpful. But you can also buy a cheap Bluetooth shutter, and you can use that to turn the camera on and off. So for the next topic, we're going to be talking about video and photo quality, and I'm going to have a little more emphasis on video since I'm kind of more interested in the video capabilities of this new device. Now, unfortunately, they're kind of using the same type of camera lenses as in the previous generation, and I believe even the S9 in terms of the kind of normal focal length dual aperture camera lens. So the Note 10 Plus is basically using the same cameras in the S series, the S10 series, and I feel like the S9 is more or less the same capability as the S10 camera lens as well. So in terms of a generation upgrade, it's really not that impressive at all. I think they focus more on the software to try to improve it, and I don't see how this software could be ported down to the older models like the S9 series and the S10 series. So if you're looking for a major upgrade in picture quality or video quality, I personally was very disappointed. They still look very saturated. They're not very sharp. It kind of gives you that kind of Samsung look. I think the look of Pixel pictures look a lot better than kind of what Samsung offers. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think the camera quality is a little bit better in terms of the software tweaks they've provided. I find that the HDR, the dynamic range between very bright parts of a picture or video, is better handled. It's kind of scenes like that where you have like a bright spot and a dark spot. That has improved quite a bit, but unfortunately, I think you're going to have to wait for the next generation or the generation after that to get, picture quality that is closer to a DSLR or a $1,000 mirrorless camera. I think the front-facing camera looks really bad too, especially compared to what I've seen on the iPhone and the Pixel 3. Everything looks very kind of cheap kind of video quality. Now, I really appreciate the triple camera on the back plus the added fourth camera, which is a depth sensor. I like having the ability to have, a wide angle, kind of a normal focal length, and a telephoto. Unfortunately, the telephoto zoom lens is actually only 2x zoom. So you're not really going to get, really zoomed in to get kind of far shots. You still have to move close to your subject. Now, for me personally, having 3 different type of rear cameras is more of a convenience. You can just use a single focal length and kind of move closer to the subject or move further away from the subject. Obviously, there are times when you can't do that. Maybe you're doing landscape photography, or you're in a very tight, kind of like a small room or something like that. So it's kind of really depends, but I think having one focal length is totally fine for now. I'm going to wait for a next generation where the picture quality has improved a lot more. Now, one of the things that Samsung was advertising a lot in their marketing campaign for the Note 10 was the video live focus feature. And thanks to the depth sensor on the rear camera, you're able to get video of a blurry background and a subject kind of more sharp or kind of in focus. And I was testing this out, and unfortunately, it doesn't look pro at all. They advertise it as pro grade film, and to me, it just kind of looks really cheesy. It looks really cheap. What ends up happening is that the separation of the subject and the blurry background, or the bokeh effect, it doesn't look very convincing. It looks like someone photoshopped something and kind of missed the edges of my kind of face or something like that. I don't know, it just looks really cheap, and I really hope that they fix it with software, because I feel like that 3D depth sensor isn't really adding much value. They also have the same effect on the front-facing camera. They actually don't have any depth sensor on the front-facing camera, and I don't know, it just kind of looks cheap, kind of like the rear camera. So I don't see any benefit to having this feature, because I don't know how often you'll be using it. Another feature they marketed heavily was the kind of rock steady or hyper smooth stabilization. Now, unfortunately, this really crops in the footage a lot. So if you're using the normal focal length, the middle focal length, you're going to zoom in really much to your subject. So you have to step back a lot. I also find that it reduces picture quality, and you can only film at 1080 at 30 frames per second. So there's a lot of restrictions in terms of the type of format you're filming in if you use this type of stabilization. I will say one good thing about it though. I think it's comparable to my GoPro Hero 7 Black in terms of its hyper smooth stabilization. I'm going to show you some test footage of it, and it does look pretty smooth, and I really appreciate this feature. So I'm not, docking any points off it. I think it works pretty well for what it is. So what you'll see next is some side-by-side comparison between the S9, the S10e, and obviously the Note 10 Plus. And we're going to compare each kind of camera, and also definitely make note of the video quality and the sound quality. I think sound is just as important. And let me know in the comments what you guys think is the better picture quality. Has the Note 10 actually improved on the picture quality? I mean, it's the same hardware, so they only have, software updates to that. So I don't know if that has made much of an improvement.
How do you think of the S10 versus the S9?
The S10e is definitely better.
Hey guys, it's Jay Syntax. We're going to be doing a comparison between the Note 10 Plus and the Samsung S9. And right now we're going to be filming at 4K 30 frames per second. And this is just an outdoor test, and there's some ambient traffic noise over there. What we're going to be testing is the sound quality. Is the sound quality on the Note 10 Plus any bit better than the previous generation of the S9, and also the video quality? So I'm going to be, right now I was about 6 feet away. Right now I'm 10 feet away. How does the audio sound in comparison between the S9 and the Note 10 Plus? Okay, so this is a comparison test between the Samsung 10e versus the Note 10 Plus. And now we're going to be testing the normal focal length, and it's at 4K 30 frames per second. And the audio quality, let's see how the audio quality is from about 6 feet away from both cameras. And I'm going to step back a bit, maybe 10 feet away. How is the audio quality between these two cameras, the Samsung 10e versus the Note 10 Plus? This is between the 10e versus the Note 10 Plus. They're both set to the widest angle, the ultra wide. In the previous clip, I actually found out that we are using video stabilization on the Note 10 Plus at 4K, whereas the 10e at 4K does not support video stabilization. That's the reason why the Note 10 Plus was actually less wide than the 10e. We turned video stabilization completely off on both cameras, and now we're going to be testing the widest angle. This is the test with the Note 10 Plus. We're at 4K with video stabilization on, and we're at the widest angle, so you can get a lot of the scenery, and it's really cool, really epic shots. Now we're going to switch to the normal focal length, which actually has 2 aperture settings. For a wider aperture, it allows in more light. So we're at the middle. And now we're going to go into the telephoto. Okay, so now we're in the telephoto, and let's see how that looks. And I'm going to actually step back. Apparently there's a zoom mic feature. Okay, so right now we're going to be testing the Note 10 Plus with the zoom mic feature. And I'm not sure if it's supposed to actually pick up this different sound. If I move around, stay focused on here. I'm gonna move. So don't move. Zoom on my voice.
Okay.
And we're gonna see if I move further away.
Yeah.
If my voice is still picked up. It's supposed to like directionally pick it up this way. So
Okay.
I'm gonna be talking, and I'm still in the frame, but I'm not sure if the microphone is still gonna pick it up. Now, can you point to me now? Point to me. Okay. So the Zoom mic should be on my voice right now, and maybe the sound is gonna be a little bit better. Right now, there's a lot of ambient noise, so it's gonna be a little hard to hear me because there's a lot of background noise. It's gonna pick that up as well as my voice. But hopefully, it's directionally challenged on me.
Okay, so right now I am testing the camera, the front-facing camera, on both the Samsung S9 and the Galaxy Note 10 Plus. And in terms of how this picture quality looks and the microphone quality, please let me know. I'm really curious. I'm going to be moving around, and this is an indoor environment, so it's not that strenuous of a test. However, there's different lighting, there's the windows there, it's kind of heavily exposed. Let's go near the window here. And I'm holding them at arm's length. And yeah, it looks like they're very similar. I guess the front-facing camera really hasn't changed. Really curious to know how the microphone is. Okay, so how's this in terms of the picture quality? This is both recording at 1080p, and the reason is because the Samsung S9 can only record up to 1440p, whereas this one, the Galaxy Note, can record up to 4K. And they're both using video stabilization with no HDR. I am recording in the same settings, except this time HDR is on. So I don't know if that's going to give perhaps some better... Oh, wow. Okay, so I think... It's hard to tell. We'll just do this one. Okay, let me just do this one here, the S9. This is HDR on. So on the S9 and the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, I've maxed out the settings on both. And the thing with the Samsung S9 is that it doesn't support video stabilization at its max 1440p, whereas even with the Note 10 Plus, it supports video stabilization. So this gives you a sense of what it looks like. And I'm just going to be walking around, kind of give some sense of how this kind of looks. Okay, so we got the background here. And you can kind of see that there's some more detail. It's handling, the Note 10 Plus is handling more of the HDR. It's pretty good here. Okay, so right now I'm testing in landscape mode using the front-facing camera. They're both all maxed out in terms of the resolution. So the Samsung S9 has around 1440p resolution, and the Galaxy Note 10 Plus is maxed out at 4K. The Note 10 Plus has stabilization even at this highest setting, whereas with the Samsung S9, it doesn't support stabilization. So I'm going to be maybe trying to shake both or something like that. And you can see that the Note 10 Plus is doing a better job at exposing both my face, which is darker than the outside, which is really bright, whereas the S9 is struggling a little bit. I'm a little dark now. Now, another important feature is the sound or the speakers. And I found that compared to the previous generation, the S9, I don't see much difference. In fact, I don't know if it's any louder or better quality. I think it's more or less the same. And what's weird is that when I'm playing music really loud, I notice that there's some weird vibration on the back of my case. So I guess, I don't know how it's designed, but it's just kind of weird, just something to note. It's not really a big deal. I kind of wish they would improve the sound quality. I feel like a bigger phone should afford better sound quality, but unfortunately it's pretty much the same as the previous generation. So let's move on to the next big feature that is advertised for the Note 10 Plus, and that's DeX. Now DeX is this feature that was actually on previous generations of Galaxy phones, the S series, where you could just plug it into an HDMI monitor, plug a keyboard, plug a mouse, and then you can basically have a full operating system with all your apps. And it actually works really well. I really like how you can actually use your keyboard, your mouse, kind of just like in regular settings, like actually if you Alt-Tab or you Control-T to open up a new tab in Chrome or have multiple windows open. It all looks pretty well. It's really cool. However, I don't really see much benefit in using it. Now, what separates this feature from the previous generation is that with the Note 10 Plus, you can simply just use any kind of USB-C cable, plug it into a PC or a Mac, and you can just download the DeX app. And then what happens is you can actually run the DeX operating system within an existing operating system. So you don't need to have like you don't have to have a separate input to a monitor, you can actually run it on a live OS. And what's interesting is that you can tell that the output of the DeX kind of image is actually a video kind of render. It's not really like kind of native. So you're kind of projecting an image of DeX onto your computer. And what ends up happening is that the frame rate is pretty slow. In some ways, you're casting video from the DeX onto your PC or your Mac, and the frame rate is affected. It doesn't feel smooth. It doesn't feel like a native experience. I'm sure it would feel a lot better if you just plugged it into a regular monitor. But I don't know, running it inside a current OS, I find that kind of pointless. If you're worried about privacy and security, maybe that's kind of a benefit of using DeX on a public computer, but I'm happy just using incognito mode on Chrome or something like that. Now, sound and notifications all sync up very well in DeX. I'm not docking any points on the Note 10 for offering this feature. I think it's a nice bonus, but I don't think the way they advertise this, I don't think this is like a reason to go out and buy this phone unless you really need this niche feature. Another feature they advertise that deals with kind of syncing your phone and your computer together is Windows Link. Now, this is really cool because I find that being able to kind of operate from my computer, kind of send text messages or look at notifications is very handy. Apparently, you can run this on the old generations like an S9 with some kind of hacks or installs like that. It's kind of nice that this is just kind of working out of the box. I did find it a little buggy. I find that there's actually a feature where you can actually preview or kind of see your exact phone, kind of like you're casting your phone to your computer, and you can interact with it and stuff like that. But every time I try to type something on my Windows PC keyboard, it crashes the app. So I don't know if that's because I'm using a different keyboard than the traditional or the original Samsung keyboard. I'm using SwiftKey on my Android OS. So I don't know if that's the issue. It's not as seamless as iMessage or just using kind of the official Android messaging app where you can kind of sync your text messages. And one kind of limiting thing is that you can only see your 20 most recent images. So I don't know. It's a really cool feature, but if you can get it on the previous generation, then it's not really a reason to just get the Note 10. So in conclusion, I think the Note 10 is really much a side grade from a previous generation. If you have an S9 or even an S8, I would definitely hold out for the S11 or the Note 11. If you really, want to get a big upgrade in your camera quality, I don't see much of an upgrade, unfortunately. I really do like the large screen, but I find that the form factor really annoys me because it's so big. I'm worried when I'm biking that the phone's going to fall out or something like that. What's worst of all is that the fingerprint sensor is just absolutely slow. The performance is terrible in the fingerprint sensor. And I find that trying to unlock your phone without looking at it deliberately and kind of trying to unlock it quick is definitely going to cause some frustrations because you're going to sometimes miss the fingerprint alignment and it's just not going to open. So that's going to be very annoying sometimes. Definitely consider that if you're making this purchase. Now, one rule of thumb is to upgrade your phone every 2 generations. And unfortunately for me, I got penalized for that because I upgraded from the S9 and I ended up with a phone that was very much a side grade. And to me, it ended up being a very mediocre experience. And couple that with the poor fingerprint sensor technology and the large form factor, it's just not for me. So this phone, as much as I try to love it, I was really excited to get it. I really don't like it at all at the end. I'm really curious to know what you guys think about this phone. Am I crazy? Like, am I the only person that doesn't like this phone? I'm not sure. I know there's actually a lot of haters out there who hate the phone because it doesn't have a phone jack. But to me, this was like really minute point. I don't really care. I have Bluetooth headsets, so to me, that's not a big point. I think all this media attention around the lack of headphone jack and people complaining and being so angry about it, I think it really detracts from all the actual real issues with this device, such as the fingerprint sensor and stuff like that. Also, there was a big article that went out from DxOMark that kind of rated this set of cameras on the Note 10 to be the best cameras and that has the highest scores. I'm not sure if that's Samsung just paying them to kind of give a really good score. I'm very skeptical of the picture quality of Samsung phones, especially since they didn't really upgrade their kind of line of camera lenses. So I would really hold a grain of salt with these types of hype reviews that are out there. Definitely consider, look for yourself, look at the video samples out there and make your best judgment. Anyways, that's all I have to say about the Note 10 Plus. I really hope that my video review wasn't too negative, and I hope that it helped you make the decision whether you were on the fence of buying this. If this video helped you in any way, please give a like. It really helps out the channel. And definitely click subscribe if you want to see more of my tech reviews. I post content every week. Anyways, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.